Puck Gold asks, at season's ends, this is a good one for you, Anthony, but be quick because I'd love to buzz through a couple. At season's ends, if the top 3 teams in the NHL end up in the Central Division, will the NHL switch to 1 versus 8 playoff system, or is that an issue changes after Bettman retires? I mean, you've always been a proponent of this playoff system. Would that change your way in any way, your opinion?
No. I think we looked at this, and if you had
4 minutes later,
right then we've been saying like, oh boy, you got to change this because the Ducks and Kings just had to play each other in the second round.
Yeah. You remember at the beginning of this when I said, be quick? That was 4 minutes ago.
Well, you can't. If you want to be quick, ask like, would you prefer 5 or 6 shots in your Americano?
Welcome back to Worst Seats in the House. Mike Russo, Anthony LaPanta. I'm coming to you from Edmonton, where I'm here covering the rivalry series, United States, Canada women's hockey, their final tune-ups before the Olympics start, we think, in February. We'll get to that later. Anthony LaPanta is back in Minnesota after a long trip on the road. And Anthony, you were just here in Edmonton. It is so weird. We're recording this podcast at 8:15 Mountain Time, and the sun is not up yet.
It's unbelievable how dark it is up there. I was telling some people before we left on the trip that you feel like you're, I don't know, in the Twilight Zone or something. I mean, it's like, and when you say it's not up yet, it's not up. It is pitch black there until it was, I think it was about 9:15, 9:30, one of the mornings before I even saw any light starting over the horizon. And then it's dark by 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It is really something, the difference just being whatever that is. I don't know how many miles north it is of the Twin Cities, but we were fortunate when we were there. It was probably the warmest it's been in Edmonton, maybe on any trip we'd been there, because it was like, I don't know, 30 degrees or something outside. Normally it's been about 4 and windy every time we've been there.
Yeah. It is definitely dark out. It's not Philip Gustafson, like, northern Sweden dark, but it's, or Jonas Brodin, where he sometimes vacations, but yeah, it's dark. Anthony, I'm in a worse mood than normal. And that's
good.
That's my usual, that's like my resting face. But no luggage. WestJet lost it. So I'm still waiting for that. Hopefully I get a call even maybe during this podcast that it's been delivered to my hotel. And from 3 to 4 a.m., the fire alarms were coming on into our hotel here. And I went downstairs this morning and asked what was going on. And this hotel, I think it's attached to that mall. And some drunk guy at like 3 a.m. decided to pull the fire alarms because we're attached to the mall from 3 to 4 a.m. They could not get this thing to stop. The most obnoxious alarm that you've ever heard. And then every like couple minutes in the midst of the alarm is a woman telling you, stay in your rooms. It was really unbelievable.
Well, you just have to take my path to that and sleep through them like I did in Vancouver that one night where the whole team evacuated the hotel. I slept through the alarm. And in the morning, I thought they were all making up a story and said, no, at like 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning or something, the alarms went off and everybody was standing out on the street in their underwear and robes and everything. And so they all thought that it meant I was like out carousing and wasn't home. I said, no, I came home with you guys at like 1 a.m. or whatever. And I slept through the whole thing, never heard it. So you must not be staying at the JW Marriott.
No, I'm staying down the street. The JW was like $650 a night. So I couldn't get in there. But I'm telling you, wasn't that the Vancouver one that you slept through? Wasn't that the one also where Bruce Boudreau just said F it and decided not to go downstairs? And
he went downstairs. Then I think he went back up, if I remember right, because he was I remember him just saying that he thought it was a fire, like some kind of a test or something. And I was like, well, who would do a test at 3:00 in the morning? But when I found out that they weren't joking, I remember turning. Mike Greenlay at the time was my partner, and I said, well, if you guys were all out there and you really thought that I wasn't there, nobody thought to like maybe knock on my door and make sure that, hey, let's make sure that we get him out of there too. You guys all just decided, well, screw it, let him sleep.
Gorg thought he was going to just take over and become play-by-play guy. That's why he didn't.
Yeah, apparently. I don't know. But I do. I have had a tendency to sleep through things like that before, and that we've had our share of travel issues too. So I know you losing your luggage on WestJet is a life changer. We had a couple. We've had 3 now in the last maybe 5 flights. Crazy. Where we've had major delays and no fault of Dominic and the Wilds travel organization. It's been all plane related, but yeah, we had this last trip it was set up to be the way I prefer, every road trip is off day game, where you never have a back to back. And in those cities in particular, it's nice because, even if you get in it late at night, the next day is an off day to recover and make sure you're on your normal schedule. But man, it was a little bit of a tester this time, where leaving Calgary to go to Vancouver, we had a couple hour delay and wound up just going to a local restaurant and having some food and a few drinks before we got on the plane, where they had to fly a different plane in to pick us up. And then the Vancouver to Seattle, which is a really short flight. So I think originally we were supposed to land be in Seattle by midnight or 12:15 or something like that. And instead it wound up being almost 4 a.m. before I got to my room. And, it's a short flight, but you still have to go through customs when you get into America and all that stuff. And so we've had a few adventures on these last couple trips.
Yeah. And, I like the one in Winnipeg where Dom was smart enough to get everybody over to, was it the Keg or the Earls or something? I think it was
Winnipeg. Let's see. We went to, because we did the same thing in Calgary. In Calgary,
Cactus
we
Club.
went to the Cactus Club, and in Winnipeg, I think we went to the Cactus Club in Winnipeg too. Okay. I think it was both. I think it was Cactus Club in both spots.
But it's never good when like Billy Aaron told me that the pilot just refused your plane in Calgary. Just said, I'm not flying this piece of F. So
I just remember it was Earls. We went to Earls in Winnipeg, Cactus Club in Calgary. But it was, and the pilot, they had a technical issue, and I think it's okay for me to share it. It was, the pilot had said that they got it was some kind of a sensor, and the pilot just said, I'm not comfortable flying this plane. And so as we were talking about it, I was like, hey, look, I am 100% on board with the pilot's decision here. If he's not comfortable with it, I'm more than happy 100%. To sit for a little while at the Cactus Club and wait for a different plane. And what it turned out it was some kind of pressure gauge, that it was a sensor on a pressure gauge that malfunctioned at 10,000 feet or something like that. And so in order to fly safely, the pilot said we'd have to stay under 10,000 feet. And because we're flying over mountains going Calgary to Vancouver, he wasn't comfortable flying that low. And I was like, well, I am 100% on board with that decision. So they waited for a new plane to get there. And look, as we've talked so many times on this show before, we are spoiled with the way we travel. And if these are the inconveniences, and as I said before, we had off days in both cities. So both times, yes, we got there later than we expected, but we got there safely. Everybody had a day to get back on their normal schedule and calendar. It did make the trip feel long. This was it felt like we had been on the road for about 3 weeks when we were on the game day in Seattle. And we were joking about it in the morning. If I feel that way at the end of a trip, you always sense that, well, the players have got to be feeling this because their grind is a lot more significant than mine is on these road trips. And if you feel like you are just, oh my God, when are we going to get home? You know that's what they're feeling too, which is why I thought the way the Wild played that final game in Seattle was impressive, because it had been a long trip, and even though off days were there, those late nights like that have a way of catching up with you by the time the trip is over.
No doubt about it. When you're getting into cities, I mean, just think of Vancouver. You guys landed around 2:30 in the morning after playing a game. It's really 4:30 Minnesota
body
time.
clock time,
and,
right?
Yeah, body clock time, and you were just there a couple days, so that
Well,
you're still getting adjusted.
like I said, the night we got into Seattle, I think it was almost 4:00 in the morning when I got into my room in Seattle after the delay in Vancouver. And in Vancouver, I was talking with Dominic Hennig, our travel coordinator guy who runs the show for the Wild when we travel, and he had the same thing set up there where he was like, let's take the guys to a restaurant and hang out for a while. But I think he was just like, I am so tired of the circus of getting everybody on a bus, driving someplace. So that time we just sat at the rink and waited, and was able to get a little work done for the next game. And it all turned out fine, but it was a late night.
I've written stories on, travel services people before. It is a stressful job. Like, that is not your fault, yet you're the one that has to deal with all the repercussions. I can't even imagine I mean, just think about the one in Winnipeg where, all of a sudden the buses leave you at the airport. And now he's got to somehow get the buses back to get you there early.
Right.
So I think
and finding a place that can at a spur of the moment, hey, I'm going to bring a group of 60 in. Yeah. And so in Winnipeg, it was on a Sunday night, which downtown Winnipeg is not exactly a bustling place to start with. And on a Sunday night, it was, hey, we're bringing the whole team in. Can you have food ready for us? And they both spots, it turned out great. I mean, they had a bunch of appetizers and stuff ready for us when we got there, and people, they got the food out to everybody quickly. It was impressive how quickly they got stuff organized to make it as comfortable as possible for the team.
Yeah, and by the way, this is a league-wide, it's a pro sports-wide issue right now. These planes, a lot of teams use this charter company. They're at the end of the road in terms of lifespan for these planes. In fact, the charter company is getting a bunch of new ones. It's still not as bad as about 6 or 7 NHL teams whose charter company went bankrupt this season. Isn't that crazy? So there's 6 or 7 NHL teams and other sports as well that are, trying to, frantically find charter companies because theirs just went under back in early November. Remember that time the Vegas Golden Knights were staying at the Fairmont in San Jose when the hotel got sold and were literally kicked out because they were no longer a Fairmont? That was 5 years ago, 6, 7 years ago, that great hotel in downtown San Jose.
Yeah, so it changed now to a different hotel brand. We used to stay there, but we have since changed and stay out on Santana Row. We've got guard dog duty going on here in Shoreview. Apparently there's either a plow guy or a delivery guy or something. So at least you'll know I'm safe during the remainder of the show.
Yep, absolutely. By the way, your microphone's getting a little. I
never knew that story about the Vegas guys being booted out of the hotel because of it. But I preferred when we stayed downtown in San Jose. But I'm not a big fan of our Santana Row rearrangement.
Yep. By the way, your microphone's getting a little bit muffly, so I don't know if you've changed positions or anything.
No, just the dogs barking in the background.
Okay.
Give me a second until the delivery guy leaves.
All right, cool. All right, let's talk about this road trip. Obviously, they salvaged it with a good effort in Seattle. Did not start very well. Well, started well with a big 1-0 win right here in Edmonton, where I am right now. I was talking to a bunch of the Edmonton people yesterday, and they all said that was as well as Edmonton's played on this homestand that they were just on, where they scored 21 goals, but they just couldn't beat Volstead. They were all raving about the way that Jonas Brodin played that night against Connor McDavid, Anthony.
I thought it was Jonas Brodin's best game of the season. And it was not only did he score the game's only goal, but he was just terrific defensively. And really the Wild's entire effort as a team that night they were so good defensively in that game. And we've talked about Brodin and his matchup with McDavid over the years, where he's talked about how much he loves that challenge, how much he elevates his game when playing. And he made a couple plays against McDavid that night that it's been over the years we've seen McDavid look back over his shoulder like, how in the world did that guy just recover against me? Nobody is able to turn with me, that when he attacks the outside with speed. He made a couple plays on Draisaitl that night. I thought he was just terrific. And yes, Wallstedt made big saves when he had to, but I thought the Wild in that game, they might have been as sharp as they've been throughout that was the 12th out of 12 of their point streak. And that might have been as complete a game as they played during that run.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I will say that you talk to anybody around the Oilers, and they say that McDavid's kryptonite is Jonas Brodin and Miro Heiskanen. That those are the only two that can really shut him down. And I saw it last night, Anthony. I went to the Sabres game. The first two periods was exactly like the Sabres Wild game, where the Sabres just, it was like hard for the Oilers to get up for the game. You're playing this team that just kind of drags you into their style of hockey. And then all of a sudden, the third period starts. A missed icing by the linesman. McDavid scores 10 seconds into the period to wake him up. Then Podkolzin scored. And then all of a sudden, with 1 second left in regulation, Connor McDavid's forces overtime. And he absolutely took over the third period. It was something to be seen. Like his speed, every shift, it was just like a captain that took him on their back. So it was amazing until Alex Tuck scored 33 seconds into overtime. And I got a chance to catch up with Alex Tuck after the game and Jordan Greenway. And I really think that Sabres team is just weird. They just, they have these great players and they just sort of can't get out of their own way from a puck management standpoint. But last night, Tage Thompson was excellent. Rasmus Dahlin, excellent. Greenway played great, I thought. And then Alex Tuck obviously has the big game. Then the Wild go down to Calgary and Vancouver. Anthony, the Calgary game was just like the game late last season, didn't you think?
Yeah, it was. And Calgary's been a tough matchup for Minnesota. We talked about it before that trip, that Edmonton's been the better of the two Alberta clubs for the last 8-10 years. And yet the Wild have had a lot more success against the Oilers than they have against the Flames. It really is interesting how that works. But Calgary plays a heavy, hard working style. And they were just a lot better than the Wild that night. It was one of the few games this season where the Wild have just simply been outplayed. John Hines said it after the game, where he just said, I don't really have any answers for you. We just got outplayed tonight. And they haven't had many like that lately. And Calgary was better. I thought Minnesota looked off. So a part of it was, you always wonder, is it the other team? Is it that Calgary knocked you off your game, or is it that you were off? And I thought the Wild looked like they were off from the beginning. Remember, they had 8 minutes of power play time in the first period, all of it coming in the last 12 minutes. So you were on the power play for essentially the last half of the first period and couldn't cash in. Had a couple looks, but not great. But everything was off. Every pass was in the skates. It was some poor decisions with the puck, and you could just kind of feel that something was amiss for the Wild. And then I thought you give the Flames credit, because for a team that has been as disappointing as maybe anybody in the NHL out of the gates this year, they're playing hard right now. And that night they were able to take advantage of a Wild club that couldn't cash in on the power play early.
No doubt about it. And it really was identical to last year, where Kaprizov, Holdy just, guys couldn't make plays. And Gus was under pressure. Another good start for the Wild, but again, they just got, I thought, a little cutesy in the first period. And I felt like the same sort of thing, in Vancouver, the Wild played really well. Like, you look at the expected goals and the high danger chances for the Canucks that night. I think the Canucks had like 2 even strength chances. From that standpoint, Wally had his first off night since October. No doubt about it. Probably since that San Jose game that he had, not the shutout one, but the one, or the second San Jose game Gus started, but the first one where he gave up 6 goals. I thought that was as bad as Wally's look. I mean, it's going to happen at times. They didn't take advantage of their opportunities early. And, the one thing about the teams that are really struggle this year, Anthony, is that they do work hard. Vancouver and Calgary both earned those victories those nights.
Yeah, I thought more Calgary than Vancouver. Vancouver, I thought it was keeping. I mean, think about the goals they scored. Yes, I thought the first one, it was one that I'm sure Wallstedt would tell you he wants that back. But They get a goal when Bouillon loses his stick and for some reason didn't grab one that they were hanging over the bench trying to give him a stick as he went by. And they lose. They give another goal when Urov lost a stick. And then they give one when Ballstead has the goofy mishandle behind the net that for a guy who handles the puck as well as he does, it's the first time I can remember watching him make that kind of a blunder. And, Vancouver really didn't generate anything in the game, and the Wild didn't cash in. And those are the nights that you can walk away from the rink and say, you're going to have a few of those over the course of the year where you're clearly the better team on the ice, but you don't finish. They get a bounce or two and you lose the game. And the Wild have had a couple on the other side early in this point streak where they weren't the better team, but got a couple bounces. I remember one with the puck coming off the end glass and deflecting off a goaltender and going in. And sometimes you're going to win some games like that. It was very different than the Calgary game where, and I thought you could sense it in listening to John after the game where Calgary came out and was as pointed and as blunt as he's been all season about how disappointed he was in the way the team played. And after the Vancouver game said, look, the way we played tonight is the way we have to play. We just didn't get rewarded. And they came out and mimicked that performance in Seattle and did get rewarded. So I think we always talk about when those games happen. Like if they had won in Calgary, you would have just easily dismissed the Vancouver loss and said, yeah, they were the better team, just lost. But because it was a second consecutive loss against a team at the bottom of the division, now you start to say, well, holy cow, what's going wrong? And you have to be able to really look at a little deeper into the games, I think. And let's say they had played in Vancouver the same way as Calgary, then I think you've got concerns because it would be back-to-back nights where you got outworked by a bottom-end team. That wasn't the case. They just didn't get rewarded for the way they played, and those games probably even out over the course of the year.
Yeah, I agree with you. And we'll take a quick break, but and talk about Seattle when we come back. I want to talk to you about the upcoming homestand, some of the injuries they're dealing with. The one thing I will add about the Vancouver game is that was such a great point that you made during the goal call, that the third goal call where Urov was so smart to get Zuccarello to support him and come in for the puck battle because he broke his stick and he had to run to the bench and get a stick. Then he gets the stick and makes the worst pinch ever, loses the stick, and it winds up an odd man rush the other way. It was almost comical, and the way you called it live was pretty impressive. We'll be right back on More Seats in the House.
Holiday season for many means a lot of stress, a lot of things you worry about. Company coming over, getting the house in order, grocery shopping and cooking, and all those gifts to buy. The last thing you need is more stuff to worry about, like the equipment in your home faltering. My advice, keep Aquarius Home Services on speed dial. Plumbing issues like a water heating that stopped heating? Call Aquarius. A light switch that seems to do, well, nothing? Call Aquarius. Trust me, I do that all the time. And a faulty furnace that forgot it's now time to keep your home warm? Well, call Aquarius. Aquarius is the company that I've trusted to take care of my home for years. Plus, right now, Aquarius provides $98 off any repair and are just a click away at AquariusHomeservices.com. Enjoy the worry-free home you deserve this holiday season and contact Aquarius Home Services. And don't forget to mention that Russo sent you. Aquarius Home Services, earning the right to be recommended. Deer hunting season is here, and it's time to own your odds with OnX Hunt, the GPS hunting app trusted by millions of hunters. With the Hunt app, you'll have access to nationwide public and private land ownership information, waypoints, tracks, and much more, all at your fingertips. Go to onxmaps.com/hunt. That's onxmaps.com/hunt to sign up today.
Hey, Rosie here for Stretch Labs. I've been talking about them for months now, and it's part of my regular exercise routine. They're located throughout the Twin Cities, and no matter who you sign up for, they have great stretch practitioners that will work with you. They are great at stretching out your hips, your back, your neck, whatever might be aching you, but more importantly, being proactive about your overall health. They understand how your body works and what you need no matter what your age, really no matter what the shape you're in, but understand how important stretching is. Black Friday right now will offer the best pricing on bundle packages of stretches. Get anywhere from 3 to 20 sessions at a discounted rate. Hey, it also makes a great gift. And for Talk North listeners, they will have access to Black Friday pricing for all of November. So check them out for yourself. Stretch Labs throughout the Twin City area.
Hey, this is Randy Shaver. Along with Kevin Gorg, we host the show Fantasy Huddle on Talk North. Each week, we're going to break down the matchups for the NFL season and try to give you the best chance to win your fantasy football games each and every week. Join us for Fantasy Huddle on Talk North.
Back here, WSITH in the house, Mike Russo, Anthony LaPanta. I'm coming to you from Edmonton. Anthony is coming to you from Minnesota. Our next live show, by the way, is December 15th at Tuttle's. That is next week, 7 p.m. Tuttle's, December 15th. Anthony, put that on your calendar, 5 days from now.
Got it.
Anthony, all right. You know how much I like to give you grief. We all know how you love to give me grief, but I'm going to tell you something, and I'm not blowing smoke, okay? But the one thing about not being on the road for a week is I've watched a ton of hockey games and a ton of broadcasts. And your guys' show is as good as it gets in the NHL. Like, I watch some of these other shows. There's no charts. There's no stats. There's no like context of foundation. Like, you watch a Wild game, and a lot of it is, because of the hard work that you put together, putting these charts together and analytics and digging in your preparation. You learn stuff during Wild games. And like, I can't tell you how many times I would take a picture of one of your charts that you were throwing on the screen and sending it to Joe and like, hey, just in case Kirill has a big game, and that one chart that you put in Vancouver after 3 games without a point or 2 games without a point, like stuff like that. Like, you don't get that on other broadcasts around the National Hockey League.
Well, I appreciate that. And I've always said, and I watch all the other local shows, and there are some good ones out there. I put our crew up there against just about anybody. And I think most nights, and we have off nights too, but I think most nights that that's the goal, I want to make sure that we add things to the broadcast that, yes, the game is the show. And we were just talking about this on the bus on the way home, or the way to the airport after the Seattle game. And we had a whole bunch of stuff we didn't use in that show, but it was because the game told the story. It was the hit by Dunn that was the story. And I thought we did a good job of just letting that be and not forcing some of the other information that we had into the show. I will say that a lot of the ideas and I do the research for them and try to support it, but Wes Walz and Ryan Carter are both really good when it comes to, hey, I was thinking about this. And in fact, the Kaprizov chart that you mentioned, that was a Wes Walz idea the day before, where he said, it'd be interesting is to see what Kirill's done after back-to-back games without a point, because I can't imagine he's had 3 very often. Well, and I've always told those guys, you guys don't waste the time doing that research. I can do it faster. Just give me the ideas if you have them. And so Wes throws that out, and that's just the way he thinks about the game. Now, sometimes he throws them out. I'll spend 15, 20 minutes researching, and I'll come back and say, you know what, there really isn't much there, Wes. They're 18th in the league and that, whatever it might be. But those guys really do a good job bringing content to the table that then I try to support. I think we are as connected to the team as anybody, and we're around the team. So the challenge is always to try to make it so that even a casual fan is entertained, where you don't want to overwhelm them with statistics and analysis and all that kind of thing. You just want to let them be entertained. But at the same time, the fan that is there, that's watching every game, a guy like you, who's, you watch it more closely than most fans, but there are a lot of fans who don't miss very many games, and you want to have enough stuff in there that is new for them on a nightly basis. And it's not always easy when you're covering the same team each night, because a lot of times the story doesn't change. You might have a week where everything's going great, but Kaprizov and Boldy are the only 2 guys scoring. Well, how do you come up with some new ideas for tomorrow's show that look at the same story from a different angle? And the same is true when the team's struggling, where it's, okay, well, the penalty kill's been lousy. The goaltending hasn't been good enough. How can we find a different way to tell what's happening? So I'm glad that, that I appreciate you saying that, because there is a ton of work that goes in behind the scenes, and we've got a graphics crew and a production crew that is right up there with the best in the league, that really takes a lot of pride in their work too. So it's a team effort, and we've got a good one here in Minnesota.
Yep, no doubt about it. Also, like, I watch a lot of shows. I mean, obviously, I think Wild fans, we didn't talk about in the last podcast, knows the snipe I took at the Avalanche radio guy, Connor McGahey. But You know, and you know, I kind of regret that I created a lot of backlash on him. But that is, I mean, look, you know, people when you're the home broadcaster, you're skewed to your team. But the one thing that was very clear, if you watch that game in Calgary, is that you and Ryan, it's not like you're pulling. It's not. You're not pulling punches because you're not being overly negative, but you are definitely telling it like it is. Like, you're just doing it in a very diplomatic way. Like, I thought that was a perfect example. And I think that more fans should watch other shows to realize, you know, just how good you guys really are, because, you know, that I thought was really impressive as well, because that game just wasn't a good one and you guys weren't pretending like it was. Let's talk about that Seattle.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just one quick comment on that is, you know, it's funny because I've had days, and I think I've shared it with you, where you'll look at a Twitter feed and you'll have one comment that says, like, I'm so tired of listening to you two guys. You're such homers and whatever. And then the very next comment will be, do these guys forget which team they're pulling for, or something like that? Like, why say that you think that's going to, why did you say that you thought that call with the Wild got a break on that? You know, and I always just say, look, we travel with the team, but I don't have any impact on whether the team wins or loses. And my job isn't to, I'm not a part of the staff. I'm not a part of the coaching staff. I'm technically not a part of the team. And our job is not to, we have to be honest, and we try to be honest. And I have always told people that a lot of times the average viewer has either watched Minnesota Wild local shows or national broadcasts. Those are two very different things. And the national show will, and just to say be negative makes it sound like they're willing to be critical. That's not, if I was doing a national show and a team, like, for example, Seattle, they had given up 7 power play goals in the last 8 chances. That's the biggest stat coming into the game. And if it was doing a Kraken show, I wouldn't be starting the show with, hey, our penalty kill is so bad, we've surrendered 7 power play goals in the last 8 chances. But if it's a national show, that is what you focus on, because that's the biggest story. We'll mention it in the show, but it's not going to be featured. So I think if you really wanted to evaluate our show compared to others in terms of the slant toward the home team, you'd have to watch the other local shows. And I think we're more down the middle than almost any other local show. I'd say the Canadian local shows maybe are the only ones that I would say might even be more down the middle than us, just because most of those local shows there even still view themselves as more of a national show because of the way that Canada looks at hockey in general. But around the United States, there aren't very many that, I mean, you watch some shows and you'll be like, I don't think this team has committed a penalty in this guy's life. Mm-hmm. The play-by-play, every call is the worst call in the world. Yep. And it's like, holy cow. And you know, everybody's a little different, but I appreciate you noticing it, because I do think we work hard to make sure that we just try to keep it factual. And yes, there are going to be nights where you'd be a fool to try to sit in the press box and say that the Wild have brought their A game tonight or just been unlucky, or there are going to be nights where they're not very good. And not that you want to stand up there and just tear into a guy or an individual, but you can say, look, they haven't been very good tonight. Calgary's been better.
Yep, absolutely. And the last thing I'll say on that, because I'm sure everybody's tired of me blowing smoke. I'm actually getting nauseated by it, but it's even just the way that you guys say it. It's like in Seattle, like, you're not when the Wild failed on those first 2 power play chances, you're not hammering it for it, but you subtly mention, by the way, this is a penalty kill. It's given up 7 goals in their last 8 chances. So you're still giving the information. You're not trashing the Wild that they didn't do it, but you, like, a homer would not even let you know that. Like, I had no idea because I'm not on the road trip and doing research on the Kraken. And so I thought that was pretty, just the way that you sort of insert little stats, I think is really impressive. Let's talk about that Kraken game. Obviously, Wild got off to a really good start. It looked like it was going sort of the way of Vancouver and Calgary, where they weren't scoring and could just bite them. And then obviously the hit on Matt Zuccarello woke him up, angered him, and then that's as angry as I've ever seen Kirill Kaprizov. And how about Danila Yurov going in there, not even thinking twice, going right after Vince Dunn, who, you know, he's not a fighter, but he's a tough defenseman. And I thought it was just, even though I do agree in letter of the law that is considered a clean hit, I loved the Wild's response that night.
I did too, and I agree with you about Kirill. He looked like a man possessed the rest of the night too. First of all, the way he reacted on the play, but then the way he took over the game he was engaged at a level that even exceeded what you normally see from him. I thought the way all the guys responded was, and keep in mind, they're playing without Marcus Foligno, who's one of the guys who would have had a response in that situation, but you had guys like Ryan Hartman, like Zach Bogosian, Danila Yurov, it was everybody stepped up. And it was interesting talking to John after the game, and he just said, we didn't really have to say much. He said, we just, the players know how we needed to respond in that kind of situation. And I liked how they stuck up for their teammates. And I thought the same. When we saw the play live, I thought that the initial contact, the primary point of contact was the chin, but when you watch the replay, I think the officials got it right. As much as I think it was an unnecessary hit, perhaps by Dunn, and maybe I thought Ryan Carter's point was these are the kind of hits that I think the NHL would like to eliminate, just because of the fact that it does put a guy at risk of injury. But I think they got it right, and if that was not a penalty, they got it right to give Yurov a double minor. He raced into the corner and initiated the pile up there. And then you had the secondary part of it was a minor against each for roughing. And, it was unfortunate for Minnesota, but I think the way that they sorted it out, they got it right.
And I think on Twitter, the Wild actually, I know fans were upset that they wound up on the PK because of it, but I think the referees intentionally gave Europe a break there, because it's like they were sending a hit that they know that they probably letter of the law would love to call, but they can't. But they also understand what Eurov's doing there. So instead of calling a fighting major, which they absolutely could have, they give him the double minor. But if it's a fighting major, he's getting 17 minutes because of instigating all that. So I think they actually gave him a break. The Wild killed the penalty and perfect there. You and I have talked about on this podcast for a long, long time just how beloved a teammate Matt Zuccarello is. And I know that, all teammates stick up for each other. But you saw in that instant how beloved Matt Zuccarello is and how important he is to this team. The Wild were incensed, and it was because of who got hit, how important he is, and seeing him as wobbly as he was leaving the ice. So we'll see how long he is going to be out. I did text with a couple people yesterday on the Wild. I'm obviously in Edmonton. The team flew back from Seattle, as we mentioned at the top of the show, and they're not practicing today, but they'll be on the ice tomorrow. So we'll see. But it does sound like Mats will miss time. I think it's obvious probably what's going on there. It looks like Jake Middleton was missed time. They'll see how he feels. It looked like to me, I don't know, Anthony, if you got a great look at it, but he went to hit Everly, and it looked like he might have skated into his butt end of his stick, and right on the chin. So I think we know there what happened. The good news is that Matt Boldy left the ice after taking a puck, and he, I'm told, is going to be fine. And then we'll see if Sturm came back to the game, but we'll see how he feels. But we'll check today if the Wild call up any players. But right now, it looks like the Wild will be out without Zuccarello and Middleton. And then you have Rossi. We have to get an update on him when the Wild get on the ice on Thursday. And then same thing, we'll get an update on Marcus Foligno.
Yeah, it seems only fitting that the team arriving at the front door are the Dallas Stars, because it seems like every time the Wild face Dallas here over the last few years, it's a crippled Wild club that's doing so. And we'll see that it is amazing some of the misfortune that the Wild have had with injuries, where it's been, getting hit with pucks or things where it's like Sturm was a puck in the ankle, Boldy was a puck. We've seen Brodin take pucks off the feet lately. It's that kind of stuff that it's not something you could prevent. I suppose it's the way the Wild play, where they're in shooting lanes as much or more than other teams, but that's how you play the game. Middleton's hit was unfortunate because you're right. He was the one that was delivering the hit and looked like he caught either a shoulder or the butt end of the stick up high. So we'll wait for an update, but look, this team has weathered some significant injury storms already this year. And I thought that's why in that Seattle game, it was the response to Zuccarello was as much the way the team stepped up emotionally, but also you forget sometimes and when you're in that spot, number one, they came into the game with 11-7, so they were playing only 11 forwards. Then you lose Zuccarello, so you're down to 10. And you sometimes then forget that not only are they down to 10, but three guys who would be in the lineup, Rossi, Foligno, and Hinostroza, aren't even on the trip.
Yeah.
So you're the amount of firepower that was out of the lineup combined with the just kind of the emotional, physical leader of the club, all of those guys gone, I thought was made the way the Wild responded and put that game away even more impressive.
Absolutely. Let me ask you what you thought of Kiefer Sherwood. That's somebody that we've reported the Wild or have had conversations with. I do think the Wild made an offer to them that was rejected. I think they offered a young prospect. I don't know who that player would be. It wouldn't shock me if it was an Ogren. But what do you think of him? He hasn't scored in 9 games in a row, I believe. And unless the Canucks played yesterday, I haven't even looked. But he was very visible that game. There's no doubt about it. He brings speed, he brings high energy, he brings physicality. But that's also something that the Wild have a lot of, Anthony. I think that you and I would both agree that the Wild's biggest issue right now is secondary scoring, and not another checker. And, you can't check the puck into the net, so, I mean, what do you think of the interest and what do you think of the player that night?
Well, I think he's a decent player. I agree with you. I don't know that that's the most glaring need that the Wild have, but I mean, he has done a little scoring. Last year, I think he had 18 or 20, somewhere 19, around there.
And he scored 12 in the first 20 games this year, but none in the last 9 or 10.
Yeah. But for most of his career, he hadn't done much. I think maybe he had one other 10-goal season. And I'm going.
Well, he's turning 31 in March, and he's only, I don't think he's played 300 NHL games. He's turning 31 in March, so this isn't a long history of an NHL player.
No, did set a record for hits in a season last year. That he'd be a guy that he for sure could help your team, but I just don't know that that's the. I don't know that that's if I had a limited number of assets to give, I'm not positive I'd want to surrender one of those right now. So I have no idea who might be on the table to make a deal like this. I really don't even know what Sherwood. I haven't looked at all. I don't know what Sherwood's contract status is. I think he's a player that can help a good team, but it's not. I don't think he wouldn't be a game-changing type guy. Now, if you all of a sudden throw together a line but I think the Wild might already have that when Foligno's back, with Foligno and Trenyon on the wings. But I suppose if you put a line together that Sherwood and Trenyon on wings, you'd have something that could be quite formidable. They're the top 2 hitters in the NHL right now. Yeah,
can you imagine Sturm in between them? That'd be. I think Dallas is one team that is really after Sherwood a lot. I think there are teams out east that have looked at him as well. I think they'd love to get a first-round pick. I would absolutely hurl if the Wild threw a first into that type of deal. It just seems like you want to save your assets. Like I watched Buffalo last night, and that is a weird locker room, and you just wonder how much more losing that could take before players stand up and be like, "I'll do a JJ Peterka, get me the hell out of here,"
right?
And so and I think who I'm talking about, Tage, obviously, who by the way last night was just awesome. So. I just don't think you waste assets now. Go big game hunting later in the season, because again, Foligno's going to be back, and if this team could ever get healthy, you're just inundated with all these checking forwards, and where are you going to put them all? So I don't know exactly why that interest is really there, but the Wild player, there's no doubt about it. And they are, by the way, today is Wednesday. They're on the 3rd day of a 3-day. Pro scouting meetings that Chris Kelleher is running in Las Vegas, and I think that we'll see where that goes. There is a roster freeze that's coming up December 19th. But as we've talked about a gazillion times on the show, Anthony, there's been no trades in the NHL other than Lucas Reichel this season and minor league trades, and there really hasn't been a substantive trade since late June. When Mitch Marner's rights were traded to the Vegas Golden Knights in a sign and trade. So, we'll talk a little bit about, there's a bunch of other things I want to get to Anthony about. We got Twitter questions as well, but we'll be right back on Worst Seats in the House.
Hey, have you been dreaming of a lake cabin lifestyle with boating, fishing, and family fun in northern Minnesota? Well, lately I've thought a lot about how cool it would be to have a getaway like so many Minnesotans. And if you're like me, you probably think that owning your own lakeside getaway is beyond your budget. Well, if you think lake cabin real estate prices keep going up, well, think again. This is Russo, and I'm here to tell you there is an affordable way to enjoy a cabin lifestyle and all that goes with it. And yes, I said affordable. I founded a clamshell beach resort, which is located on the Whitefish chain of 14 lakes for you and your family to enjoy. Here's how. Clamshell has lake homes that offer deeded fractional ownership, and the keywords there are deeded and fractional. You own it. Imagine having 5 weeks a year to enjoy Clamshell with its beaches, pool, and lodge that's full of kids' activities. Is golf your game? There's a great golf course right across the road. Like winter sports? Well, you can go ice fishing, cross-country skiing, or snowmobiling right out the door at Clamshell. And there's no maintenance, no grass mowing, no snow removal. It's done all for you. And you can own a share of Clamshell Beach Resort at an affordable price. To learn more about ownership opportunities at Clamshell Beach Resort, go to cottagesonwhitefish.com or contact Pat Egan at 612-220-9819. That's cottagesonwhitefish.com or Pat Egan at 612-220-9819.
So I want to thank Twill in the Edina Galleria, twillmn.com. Go there, sign up for their alerts. You only get a couple of emails a year, but when you get the email, it'll be about a special event or a sale that's dramatic. I got a lot of stuff when they had a 40% off sale this summer when they were clearing out their summer inventory for fall inventory. It's not a huge store. It's easy to shop. That also means that when it's time for them to clear stuff out, they're going to give you a great deal. Go there, say hello to Scott Dayton, my friend. It's Twill by Scott Dayton in the Edina Galleria. Best men's clothing store in Minnesota. Go check it out.
There are many reasons to open a smart checking account at Royal Credit Union, including no monthly fees, no minimum balance, and a $250 bonus. Getting your $250 is easy. Open your account by December 9th. Receive 2 payroll direct deposits of $200 or more, and you'll get a $250 bonus. See details and open your account today at rcu.org/getchecking. No minimum balance required to obtain bonus. Offer ends 12/9/25. Insured by NCUA.
Welcome back to Worst Seats in the House. Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta. Anthony, I did get a email or direct message on Twitter from somebody that said, "Hey, Russo, love your pod. A while back, I remember Anthony's favorite wine was mentioned, and I thought I wrote it down, but I can't find it. Can you tell me what it is?" I told him any Antinori, maybe Tignanello, but what do you have a better one to offer him?
The Tignanello from Antinori certainly is one of my favorites. I love the Meritazio from David Arthur, which is their Sangiovese and Cabernet blend. Which is really good. But I also love the Ranieri Brunello, and those would be the three. I'm sure if he's talking about something I've mentioned before, it was probably either the Tignanello or the Meritazio.
And by the way, we basically have a sommelier on the call with us, our producer Davide. If you want to chime in, anything you want to add, Davide? If we haven't put you to sleep yet?
No, I'm not sleeping. Thanks for having me, guys.
Okay.
You know, I live here in Montepulciano in Tuscany, and so I'm going to vouch for that wine. Any Vino Nobile di Montepulciano, let's say Le Berne or De Ricci or the Contucci is well known. Those wines, pretty sure they're great. It's also, depends on what you're looking for. If you want heavy full body wine, I would go with a Amarone del Valpolicella, and or you can go either with a Barbaresco or a Barolo. Then you have a full body one.
Yeah, and
by the way,
the only thing I would add, and I'd be curious, like in Montepulciano, it's most of those wines are primarily the Sangiovese grape, which I love. That's one of my favorite grapes. But there's also the Montepulciano grape that I love that comes from that area that they like. I'm not as big a fan of the Amarone. To me, it has a little bit more of almost like a raisin taste to it, like a sweetness. Those aren't my favorites. There are some good ones, but they're not my favorites. And Barolos, I love a good Barolo if it's a full bodied. Sometimes if you get a young Barolo with that Nebbiolo grape, they can be a little lighter, where I prefer the Brunellos, but it's all about what you like and what you're looking for.
It's all tasting. And some people prefer actually the Barbaresco over the Barolo because it is more full body than the Barolo. So there you have it. But yeah, Montepulciano, they came under scrutiny because of the Montepulciano grape that is in Abruzzo, in the region of Abruzzo, because it's not the same. The Vino Nobile is different from here. That's a Sangiovese grape, like you said, Anthony, and it's way different wine than the Montepulciano d'Abruzzo that some people buy as well. So
right,
don't you host a wine podcast?
Is a lot better.
Davide, don't you host a podcast, a wine podcast?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
I host a travel and lifestyle podcast for Italy with my wife.
Well,
yes.
Okay. Is it in Italian?
No, it's in English.
All right. Yeah. If you want to promote it.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, it's called Experience Italy with Friends. And so we talk about Italy, mostly travel.
That's awesome.
And lifestyle. And we had actually an episode on wine where we had a guest on it. And we also talked about pizza, for example. And of course, we talk about the regions of Italy. And right now, we talking about the Olympic Games.
Yeah, tell everybody what you did today.
Okay, so the Olympic flame came to Italy on December 6th. And so it will travel now all over Italy in no logical order. And today it came in our town, in Montepulciano. So today I went up, we had lunch with my wife, and we were we were told, it will come about 2 p.m. So we were there and waiting. And then all of a sudden said, it's going to be 3 p.m. And then all of a sudden it said 4 p.m. And I go I'm out. So, because I had to record this podcast. So,
and you left your wife
the one
there.
thing I'll say, and I'm people know the fact that I'm partial to Italians, but that is the one thing that we've learned on our trips to Europe in the summer. And we'll be going back this summer to start our trip in Como. My family's actually also going to visit the Puglia region when we are over in May for my son's getting married in Greece. But the one thing you have to learn to live with in Italy is that they are not the most time sensitive people on the planet, where if they say, when we went to the Alps and went to Germany and Switzerland and Austria, if they said they were leaving at 2:02, they left at 2:02. And in Italy, if they said, we're going to leave about 2, it could be anywhere between 2 and 4.
Exactly. And that's with everything. I went to see the cycling tour, Giro d'Italia, and it's going to come past here at 2:30. And of course not. It's all, it's whatever they feel like.
This is a perfect segue to talk about the Olympics, yes. Anthony, because I'll tell you what, I mean, we are learning exactly what you just said with the buildings. I mean, this is absurd. I mentioned I'm in Edmonton for the women's hockey, Canada versus USA, their final games before selecting their Olympic teams. And on February 2nd, now they're saying that the Olympic buildings will be done, and their tournament starts on February 5th. And I mean, it's just absurd the way that this whole thing has been done. I told you I went and took an Uber to the big rink, the one that's going to be where the gold medal games are going to be at. When I was there in August for the NHL media tour, and it was frightening how barely complete this building was. They didn't break the ground on the practice facility yet. There were no infrastructure, roads in, anything. It was just right off a highway. That was essentially it. And now CJ and I unearthed the other day that the rink is actually shorter than what an NHL rink was going to be. Team Canada knew this. Team USA did not. The National Hockey League deputy commissioner admitted that he found out from us last week. Many people in the NHLPA didn't know. And while 3 feet might seem no different, the Olympic agreement states this is supposed to be a 200 by 85, and it's not. And now the NHL is insisting that the next Olympics in 2030 are going to be on protocol. But it is just scary. If the quality of this building could be complete all they want, Anthony. But if the quality of ice is crap, if these refrigerator plants aren't perfect, like the NHL and the NHLPA are going to have a huge decision to make when they're in Milan on what they're going to do, because there's no way they're going to put these guys in peril to play on 3, 4, 5 games a night on ice that isn't up to NHL standards.
Well, yes, is the short answer. And there's all of these things. Like I had a couple people ask me, like, well, what difference does 3 feet make? 3 feet that's a big difference. And when you start talking about 3 feet times the width of you're talking about, anywhere from 270 to 300 square feet less on the ice. Mm-hmm. That's a big difference. And
especially in the context, Anthony, that the Four Nations tournament, there was no room. It was as fast as can be. I mean, remember Shea Theodore? Yeah, Shea Theodore got hurt in the first game and broke his wrist. We've seen John Tavares get hurt before in the Olympics. We've seen Dominic Hasek get hurt before in the Olympics. I mean, this is I think a big deal.
Well, that's what the point I was just going to make is we were talking about how those were the fastest. Everybody talked about these were the fastest hockey games they had ever seen because of the skill that was on the ice. And now you take 300 square feet of ice away and put those same guys out there playing at that same speed. That's a big difference. And I think I don't know. I have no idea how this could even possibly happen. I mean, how difficult is it to say we're going to build the rink at this exact size? Those specifications have been known for certainly forever since the Olympics were announced to be going to Italy in the first place. But I think what it will beg the question is what it does I don't know how they can pull out of the Olympics at this point. It seems like they're just going to have to make it work, but the NHL probably is going to have to get involved and it's not like the NHL dictates any of this stuff, but no, I mean, somehow they're going to have to get involved to say, look, even if it means that somehow financially they have to help out to make sure that their players are as safe as they can be in terms of ice quality. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something like that. But I think for future Olympic participation, this is going to have to be more clearly laid out that these are the specifications that will be in place or the NHL will not be there.
Absolutely. It's just unacceptable. And the fact that this building is going to be essentially opening 3 days before the women's games is just absurd to me. All right, let's go to Twitter questions. Anthony, I did want to talk to you. What do you think of Aatu Räty the other day? He scored 2 goals. He was 80-something% on the faceoff. He had 1 goal overturned. Remember, he is the guy that I reported the Wild offered Marco Rossi to the Vancouver Canucks for Räty, Shilans, and the 15th overall pick in June, and the Canucks actually turned it down. What do you think of the kid?
I liked him. I thought he was good. The faceoffs that were a problem for the Wild on this trip, it was clear. And the Vancouver game was a great example of it, where it was Räty that had a big night and David Kampf had a huge night. If I remember right,
the Wild
Räty was 14-2 and Kampf was 15-4 or something like that, or 15-5 maybe. Between the two of them, they won 29 or 30 out of 36 draws. And I thought Räty was great in that game. I haven't watched Vancouver a lot this season, so I don't know that one game would be fair to judge a guy, but he sure was good in that game.
Yep. All right. Zach Dawson goes, have you noticed that Blam seems to fumble the puck a lot? It rolls off his stick or he overskates the puck. Do you think it's nerves or something he needs to work on? I don't remember him doing that in college. Anthony, what do you think? I mean, the one thing I'll just say about young players, and especially 18, I can't even imagine playing this league at his age. He's turning 20, maybe even today. But I remember when Mikhail Granlund, his first year in the NHL, he couldn't even stay up on his feet. Even Kaprizov was so marketably, even as good as he was his rookie year, was so marketably better in year 2. Marco Rossi, we saw it takes adjustment. This is what we're seeing now from Zeke Boyum is hardly a finished product.
Yeah, that's true. I think a lot of it just is when the speed elevates to a level they've never played. Sometimes it's just human nature to try to go a little faster. And the term that you'll hear people use is that you can tell players make the next step when the game slows down for them. And I think it's just because it's their body catches up with their brain, and maybe their brain convinces their body to just slow down a little bit. And I think that's what we're seeing with Zeev, because we see him maybe a time or two per game where all of a sudden his feet just get going too fast, and we'll see him fall down. And I think the same is happening sometimes with the puck on his stick, where a play that used to be there, now he's at a level where it's not. And all of a sudden you have to react quickly. I think his game's headed in the right direction. I still think that, there's a long way to go. And I think I mentioned it on this show before. I remember talking to Rick Wilson about it back when he was a Wild assistant coach. And he always said, you really can't evaluate an NHL defenseman until they've played 300 games, because that's when defensemen more than other positions, it's a bigger adjustment for them to move from whatever level they played before to the NHL. And, some guys now have made that transition a little quicker, some of the superstar defensemen, but it's still, we had a graphic the other night, and I think they used it in the pregame show. We never used it in the game, comparing Zeev it was the night they played Vancouver. So we looked at what Quinn Hughes had done at that point in his career, and then that prompted us to look at a couple of the other young defensemen right now that are drawing a lot of attention. One was Lane Hutson, who, last year was one of the Calder candidates, and a similar style defenseman, I'd say. And then the other is Matt Schaefer, who this year is off to such a great start. And if you look at what Zeev's done compared to those guys, it's not that far off from what those guys did at that point in their careers. And so it's, you just have to be a little bit patient. Hughes had scored a little bit more than Buium to this point, and Hudson and Schaefer had played more minutes, and both of those guys were on teams that didn't have as deep a D-core as what the Wild have. All of them except for Schaefer were significant minus players at this point in their career, talking 28 or 30 games into their career. But out of all of them, and not that Zeev's the only guy contributing to this, but Zeev's team has the best record that any of those teams had through 30 games, which is why it was easier for Montreal to just say, we're going to watch Lane Hutson take some lumps on the ice, because their team had lost 18 out of their first 28 games. They didn't think they were going anywhere. It's a lot easier to do it when that's the case.
The one thing I'd love to see that Zeev do, and I think that we'll eventually see it, is like when he skates into the offensive zone with the puck, like with speed on the power play, cuts to the middle, like just rip it, man. Like that's where he seems to fumble the puck. And so like he'll all of a sudden, I don't know if it's no confidence or what it is, but that he just will not pull the trigger. And that's when he loses the puck, because people converge on you so quickly. So that's what I'd love to see in terms of maturation. Jordan asks, who's your MVP for the Wild so far, and why is it Matt Boldy? I mean, it could be, Boldy's been probably their most consistent player, except for that 10-game stretch where, he had the one goal. Johansson's been as consistent a player as they've had on this team all season. And then their goaltenders, Anthony, would you agree?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is, to me, Jesper Wallstedt might be, because his hot streak really coincides with when the team took off. And the guy wins 7 games in a row and has 3 shutouts in a 4-game stretch. I mean, that's hard to argue with that at this point in the season. Johansson's probably been as important a player as they've had, just because wherever he's played, the line he's been a part of has been the team's best line. And he continues to just bring such amazing consistency. He's a plus 11 player on a team that, where no other forward is even in that stratosphere. He's been great, but I wouldn't, you couldn't say he's their most valuable player, because Boldy and Kaprizov are their most valuable. I mean, those are the guys that without them, you're going nowhere. I guess if I had to pick one guy right now, I'd probably lean Wallstedt, with Boldy a close second.
Yeah. I agree with you. The Wild, a lot, I won't read this verbatim, but a lot of slander against Vladimir Tarasenko in terms of questions, Anthony. And I do wonder if this will come to a head at some point. Like obviously he gets the empty net goal the other night. Maybe that, we always talk when a guy's in a slump that maybe that can spark him, but shot off the butt or an empty netter or something like that. But he does seem to, the team has definitely been different, coincidence or not, with him back in the lineup. They were 7-0 without him. Analytically, the lines that he's on don't perform as well when he's not on them, if that makes sense. You do kind of wonder if just at some point they are going to have to deal with this, especially as they get healthy players back and maybe work with Pat Brisson to find him a place elsewhere or, go waiver route. I mean, it doesn't seem like this is something that is going to turn out to be a great experiment.
Well, I think I thought the other night in Seattle might have been one of his better games Definitely. Of the year. I thought he looked good with Kaprizov and Yurov that night. And, the one thing I'll say is his skating has been better than I thought it was going to be. I expected him to be a little bit more of slow-footed might be an exaggeration, but I thought his skating might be more of a detriment than it appears to be. His hands to me haven't looked as good as I thought I remembered him when watching him play against the Wild over the years.
Like if he could just catch that puck in Vancouver from Hartman,
Right. And so I think we'll see what happens. We keep talking about, when everybody's healthy, let's see if everybody ever is healthy first before trying to figure out exactly who's going to be the odd man out when everybody's in the lineup. And so I don't think there's any reason right now that they have to be pressing to make a decision. But if everybody is healthy, if Rossi, Foligno, Hinostroza are all back at the same time, you could make the case that he might be the odd man out. He has been good on the power play, and he helps that second power play unit. No question about that. But you'd have to make a decision on what's most important at that point.
Yep. Puck Gold asked the 06 Olympics were 90 miles east of Milan and Torino at an Alpi arena. I just went to their website. They have no events scheduled in February, and they have an Olympic-sized rink in the arena. Why don't they move the ice hockey games to there? Actually, correct me if I'm wrong, Davide, you might know this. I think that arena is an event center now. I don't think there's any ice plants in it anymore. But that would, if there was, that would be an option, or moving it to Switzerland. But right now they're saying there is absolutely no plan B. Tom Gertis asks, how was LaPanta's Cyber Saturday? Heard there were some great deals that day.
Cyber Saturday. I did do a little shopping. See, when was I in the mall? I would have been in Winnipeg. I did a little shopping. I did the same in Calgary. No, in Vancouver. So and Seattle. So I don't know if it's counted as Cyber Saturday, but there were still the remnants of some Black Friday sales when I was out in the mall and spent a little time. I went out to the Bellevue area in Seattle. I love the mall out there. So bummed around there for a couple hours. I'll have to see. I didn't buy any cyber equipment though.
Yeah. Let's buzz through a couple more and then we'll wrap up the show. It's been a fun one. At least for Anthony and I. Puck Gold asks, at season's ends, this is a good one for you, Anthony, but be quick because I'd love to buzz through a couple. At season's ends, if the top three teams in the NHL end up in the Central Division, will the NHL switch to 1 versus 8 playoff system, or is that an issue changes after Bettman retires? I mean, you've always been a proponent of this playoff system. Would that change your way in any way, your opinion?
No. I think the number of things that would change. Like, you remember last year we looked at this, and if you had gone to the 1-8 last year, where the division winners were 1-2, and then everybody else was seeded 3 through 8, what would have changed is so minimal that it would have Dallas would have played Edmonton instead of Colorado. LA would have played Colorado instead of Edmonton. That's not a major change. And in this case, what Minnesota would be I guess they'd be the 4 seed if you seeded them, 1 through 8, is because the Pacific champ would be the 2. So the Wild would be the 4 seed instead of essentially the 3. And, they're playing Colorado or Dallas right now in the first round. They'd be the 4 seed, and I don't even know who they would play, but the change is so minimal usually. Like last year, Dallas through Edmonton, all 4 teams were separated by 4 points. So does it really matter if you play Edmonton instead of Colorado? The Eastern final last year between Carolina and Edmonton, or Carolina and Florida, would have been a first round series if you did it with the 1v8. And, because Carolina would have played Florida instead of New Jersey, Tampa would have played New Jersey instead of Florida. If you finish third in your division, that's probably where you deserve to be. And there will be years, trust me. I mean, think about, let's say they didn't have this format, but remember the years when the strength of the West was the Pacific, where LA, Anaheim, San Jose were three of the elites in the West for about a 5, 6, 8 year span. Ducks won a cup, Kings won a cup. I mean, think of right then, would then we have been saying like, oh boy, you got to change this because the Ducks and Kings just had to play each other in the second round?
Yeah. You remember at the beginning of this when I said, be quick? That was 4 minutes ago.
Well, you can't. If you want to be quick, ask like, would you prefer 5 or 6 shots in your Americano? I mean, that can't ask a question like that. I think it's, yes, I think it would be frustrating to be a Wild fan and say we have the third best record in the league and we have to play Dallas in the first round. But everybody's in the same spot, and the Central Division it's a war. But that's what makes it fun too. Those rivalries are what makes it fun.
I'd love to go to Colorado. We haven't been there for a while. It's always fun going there for a playoff series. And I could have like a cage match with the broadcasters. Jeffrey asks, Heights Batchick for Stamkos, reasonable or no? I don't think that's reasonable, Anthony. Like Stamkos is in on his last legs. He's incredibly expensive and he's not a center anymore. So I don't think that's reasonable. Eric Buckley, will a no move clause for Gus cause an expansion problem to protect Wallstedt? Not at all, because his no moves only for a couple of seasons. Next year and the year after, and there's not going to be expansion in those. Anthony, who are the untouchables? Alec wants to know. Obviously, Boldy, Kaprizov. Think Volstad's entering that?
Yeah, I think he's probably close to that. I mean, I think right now it would be, if you're not talking about guys who can't be moved, I'd say there's no chance you move Faber, Kaprizov, Boldy. That might be it. I mean, almost anybody else, if the right deal was out there, I think would be considered. But I think right now it'd be a hard time to move Volstad with how well he's playing and how young he is in his career. But I just, if you're not talking about guys who can't be moved and you just talk about who would you move, I think almost anybody right now, Billy would be willing to say for the right deal, you consider just about anything. I'd be curious to talk to him sometime during an off season just about how many of his players get mentioned in whether it even be just a surface level initial call kind of trade talk.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Let's see if there's any. Will asks who's Sully's cousin, I think, or nephew, who gets trolled the most online between you two? It's got to be me, Anthony, right?
Well,
I kind of bring it on myself
more. Yeah, who notices getting trolled more, you or me?
I know, but I was excited that you that the guy that told you to retire the other day, that you snapped back at. I loved it.
Yeah, I happened to. It was right when I got on the bus. I think it was when I flipped on my phone. It was the first thing I saw, and I said, well, I'll reply to that guy. But it's I don't go looking for it for sure. If people will tag me, I then sometimes will catch them after games. I did see the other day when we had an off day, and I scrolled back through for a few minutes. I meant to reply to a few people, and I then kind of forgot and got distracted. But I just don't, I don't spend a ton of time reading them, so it's hard to say that I would. I mean, I'm sure I get trolled, but I don't know.
Yeah. I thought there was a funny one from somebody asked, what are the Wild's plans for Riga Lorenz? I think they'd sign him, but I don't know. It's also up to him, right? There was a funny one from our mutual friend Marty, but I can't seem to find it right now. Dave asks, I live in Henderson, Nevada, and recently saw the teams playing for Vegas with the latest flight issues, as many have their own plane. No, they charter from Delta, and the only team that I know of that has their own plane is Vegas. Rangers used to, but they don't anymore. I think that's it.
Vegas used to be one of the teams that Delta had. I don't know how many teams Delta is in charge of anymore, but I want to say it's and they've maybe 6 to 8 in both the NHL and NBA, I think. But
no, I think it's upwards of 30 between baseball too, and there's a ton. All right, here we go. Marty goes, do you ever sit behind the microphone at Tuttle's at 6:58? Anthony has yet to arrive for a 7 p.m. podcast and think to yourself, I wonder what life would be like if I had never met him. Who would I argue with? Would I still need to take my anxiety pills? That is exactly what I think.
Well, you're the only one that can answer that.
I've been so stress-free with you on the road.
You just said you're as stressed. You started the show by saying you're in the worst mood you've ever been and the highest stress ever, and I haven't seen you in a week.
Well, that's because WestJet lost my bag and the fire alarms were going off for an hour.
I didn't have anything to do with that.
We'll see about that. I don't know about that. My guess is that you jinxed it.
Yeah, good luck.
All right. Thanks to our sponsors. Our next live show is December 15th at Tuttle's at 7 p.m. Anthony will be showing up at 6:58 p.m. Thanks to our incredible sponsors and for joining us at the Aquarius Home Services studio on location in both Edmonton and Anthony LaPanta's home. Aquarius Home Services, your local authorized dealer for Connecticut water treatment systems, Clamshell Beach Resorts, Onyx Maps, Twillin the Edina Galleria, Royal Credit Union, and Stretch Lab. Talk to you on December 15th, 7 p.m. sharp at Tuttle's, Anthony.
See you then.
So much coming out, there's no